Welcome to the Ryan Frank Podcast. Ryan is a family man, first and foremost, but he's also a pastor, publisher, and serial entrepreneur. This podcast will help you think, work, and create like never before.
Welcome to the Ryan Frank Podcast. This is Ryan Frank, and thank you so much for tuning in. If you feel like you've got way too many things on your to-do list, or you've got monkeys hanging on your back, like, man, there's just stuff I can't get done. Or maybe you just feel overwhelmed, or that you've got all of these plates spinning in the air and you don't know how to manage them. Today's podcast is for you, because we are going to jump into the discussion of how to be productive. And you're going to meet Jim Wideman. Jim is a dear friend of mine. He is a pastor, an author, a ministry coach, and there is so much I could have talked to Jim about on the podcast today, but I decided to focus on productivity because part of the reason I do this podcast every week is I want you to think, work, and create like never before. I really do want you to be productive. I don't want you to just be busy. It's easy to be busy. Look around. Everybody's busy, but few learn to be productive. And so today in our conversation, we're going to talk about super practical things like building a to-do list and delegating tasks and managing distractions and learning to say yes and no to the right things and so much more. Before we jump into the conversation, 2 years ago, I wrote a book called Eat the Frog First. And eating the frog first, when it comes to productivity, is doing the most difficult and challenging tasks first and foremost. Mark Twain once said, if you eat a live frog first thing every day, nothing worse will happen to you the rest of the day. And think about it, it's true. What's worse than eating a live frog? When you think about productivity, eating the frog first means I'm going to do the most undesirable, difficult, challenging tasks first, and then I'll reward myself with the stuff that's easier. And it really is a key to getting stuff done. You can find my book, Eat the Frog First, on Amazon or at kidsmatter.com. Friends, here's my conversation with Jim Wideman about how to be productive. You're going to love it. Let's get this show on the road. What's up, Jim? Welcome to the podcast.
Hey, Ryan. It is such an honor to be on it. I don't even know how many times I've got to be on the podcast before, but it's always good to be back.
This isn't a first, for sure.
This is not a first, and it won't be a last.
I don't think it will. I don't think it will. Jim, thank you for being with us. Jim, you are such an inspiration to so many. And through your books and your coaching and your training and your blog and your, all the podcasts you do, and you're doing so much to empower leaders and come alongside young leaders and old leaders. And I'm so excited about today's topic because if there's anybody that I enjoy talking productivity with, it's Jim Wideman, because you love productivity and you love staying sharp. And
man, I love hanging out with young people and letting them teach me about it.
Isn't that it? Yes. Yeah. So Jim, take a few minutes. I don't want to assume everybody knows Jim Wideman. Take a few minutes and just share with us your ministry journey and what that looks like for you even today.
Well, I was 20 in the 70s, and now I'm about to turn 70 in the 20s. And, I've got to lead as a 20-year-old children's pastor, 30, 40, 50, 60, almost to start that next decade. And still, ministry has changed. I was blessed to be a part of the modern children's movement when it wasn't so popular, when it didn't exist. And really children's ministry and the extended hour type stuff beyond Sunday school was a brand new concept. And I was blessed to get to invent a lot of things that now we do on a regular basis in children's ministry. And it's hard to believe, but you couldn't even get a cassette with music to lead worship in. If you didn't play an instrument yourself, there was nothing available when I started. And I wasn't the first person to ever have worship for kids on a cassette, but I was the second.
Okay.
and
Yep.
got Ken Blunt, Nicodemus, singing "Cowboy Beat Me to It," and got to work with him. We always did different songs, so uh, children's pastors would have more stuff and didn't do the same songs. And now I've turned the music stuff over to Yancey,
Mm.
my daughter, oldest daughter, and I went from being Jim Wideman to Yancey's dad,
Yep.
and it has just been a blessing. I've served as kids pastor, Christian ed director, family pastor, next gen guy over the years. Right now, I'm serving executive pastor of ministries and get to be over everything birth through death at my church, Conduit Church in South Franklin, Tennessee. And I live in Murfreesboro, where the Kids Matter Conference is, and the
Yes.
conference is about a mile and a half at most
That's crazy.
from my house. And so
Wow.
I was rubbing it into Ryan that I'm sleeping in my own bed and not sleeping in a hotel for the first conference. Even when we were on the other side of town in Nashville,
Yeah.
I stayed in a friend's Airbnb, so I didn't have an hour drive every day. And so
And now
it's
you just take that 5-minute drive. Isn't that nice?
oh my goodness, I might even walk. Who knows?
Yep.
And it's too hot. So
Yep.
you guys that are coming to Tennessee, don't bring a jacket. You won't need it.
No,
But
it's warm.
might be fall where you live, but fall here is 105.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Jim, you've got a great story, and I know there's so much more you could have shared that you just kind of hit the high points. But I'm so thankful for you, and I'm excited about our conversation because I know you are passionate about leaders not just being busy, but being productive. It's easy to be busy, but it takes work to be productive. Let's
That's
talk
true.
about that. And I think it kind of starts with, and this might seem a little basic, but I'd like to hit it. And that is, let's jump right into the weeds. Let's talk about to-do lists.
Yeah.
So, if you're going to be productive and you're spinning all of these plates as a ministry leader, you have to effectively learn to manage a to-do list. Do you agree?
We read that. Yeah. You better believe it. And Ron, it took me years to figure out that the to-do list I was making for Monday was really the to-do list for the whole week.
Mm.
I really thought for many years that big old long list of things I thought I was going to get done on Monday was really my weekly list. And so I use a wonderful little tool called Todoist. It's an app, and I like it for two reasons. Number one, you can color code stuff, and I like stuff where I can color code it. My calendar's color coded, and so I match those same colors of the different calendars I have with my to-dos, and use that. I also like it because it kind of sounds King James, and that's kind of where I started. So I kind of like to do it. But basically, I have a separate to-do list for every project, every activity, everything, whether it be personal, whether it be family related, for every ministry I oversee, whether it be like our early childhood is one all on one calendar and one to-do list, elementaries on another, church-wide events are on another, and gym-wide ministry stuff, because I just use the same basic calendar, but yet it's really multiple calendars for all the things I have. And I can, to me, nobody starts off burning out. Burnout comes when you're overwhelmed for long periods of time.
Yeah.
And so all overwhelm means is you lose the ability to take something big, break it down into manageable parts.
Yeah.
And I know we'll talk about breaking stuff down a little bit, but I,
Mhm.
I basically am able to not see the to-dos I'm not working on. If it's a Jim Wideman thing or a personal thing or something,
Yeah.
one of the things that frustrated me about to-do lists is I looked at all that stuff and where do you jump in?
Yeah.
So I'm able to separate it by day and look at different things that I have for that day. I can look at it by just projects. If VBS is coming, I'm
Yeah.
looking at my whole list for VBS. I'm not looking at anything for any other ministry I oversee. So
Yeah.
I'm able to focus, and that's what I love. I'm also able to assign other people to task and get them involved. So if it's on somebody else I lead's radar, I can see where they are on that task.
Uh-huh.
And so it's really just a to-do list on steroids. And there's several out there. That's just the one I like using. It also lets me change the color of the app so it looks good on the front of my phone, but match my color scheme. But
Yeah.
that's
Now, I
um,
didn't know that. I will tell you, Jim, I used Todoist. I didn't realize that that's what we both use, and I've been on it for several years.
oh yeah.
And I
I've
can,
used I've used about five others
I probably have as well. Yeah.
because Sam Lewis, uh, a lot of the guys I run with, and Corey Jones. I always say before I hang up with any young leader, what are five apps you're using
Hmm.
that you couldn't live without?
Yeah.
And then I'm able to look at them and compare it to mine. Sometimes I'll try it for a day, still using my other, but I always come back to Todoist.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you make a to-do list every day? Like these are the things I want to do today, or
Um, I love your little sheet of paper of what you want to do today. When
yeah.
I set mine up, I already have it by day,
Okay. Okay.
so it just shows on that day uh, what I'm doing. And uh, if there's something I keep moving to the next day
Hmm.
or the next day, or I put off, or it's been on there for a couple of weeks, and I start questioning, am I the person to have that on my to-do list, or is it even important?
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh, and if I'm not making time to do it, I love the list you have
Hmm.
uh, of who you want to talk to today. Who
Yes.
I just make that as a prompt. I do that on
Okay.
Todoist, but I just make that only my number one priorities are the things that must be done that day.
That makes sense. And I love what you said, Jim, that there are, 100 different apps out there and systems. The thing is you just need to find one and
Yeah,
start using it, right? And be willing to try a different one. If you like it better and it you know, you just something seems to fit you better, start using it. But you need to have a system in place
yeah. One
to
of the
follow.
nicest things somebody said about me once, Spencer Click, who I've coached Spencer since he was 16 years old, and he's a great pastor in
Yeah.
New Jersey. Used to be a children's pastor. Wonderful person. Spencer said, "Things Jim does isn't really rocket science. It's really simple. He's just real consistent with it."
There you go.
And I think that's the key: is
Yeah.
find something you'll use,
Yeah.
and if it works for you, don't give in. I didn't give in to peer pressure when I was in high school, and I'm not going to do it now
Yeah.
either. I just, I just do what I do,
Yeah.
and I keep doing it, and I get consistent with it, and um, every night before I go to bed, I look at tomorrow, and I look at my day to day, and I say, okay, what did I do well that I need to adapt and take with me? what do I need to eliminate? And, I do that every night.
Yeah. Yeah. And
Before I say my prayers and tuck myself in.
don't you think when you do that at night, boy, you just get a head start on the next day, because you almost
Yeah.
wake up with the mindset, I'm ready to go. And you've
Well, I
thought about it for the
really
night.
don't remember what, my wife will say, what you got going tomorrow? And I'll say, let me look at my calendar. And
Uh-huh.
Julie's always amazed. She says, you can't tell me what you're doing tomorrow. And the answer is just real simple. My brain is for thinking and dreaming,
Yeah.
and my calendar is for remembering.
Yeah. Yeah. That's right. Yeah. That's why you need to be using a calendar and a to-do list,
Yeah.
because you're exactly right. God, you need to use your brain for other things and try to remember
Yeah.
everything that you won't do.
Yeah.
Jim, you mentioned earlier that when you use to-do lists, you like that you're able to delegate, assign tasks to others. So let's talk about that a little bit.
Yeah.
I think one of the keys to getting things done and being productive, I have people ask me, I'm just like they ask you, Jim, how do you get so much stuff done? And I'll normally say it's because I know how to set priorities and I know how to delegate.
Yeah.
And, but delegating isn't always easy. And we both have
Right.
met a lot of leaders that just are holding on to too much stuff and they're not delegating. Will you talk to us
Yeah.
about why you think we have a hard time delegating, and what can we do to be a better delegator?
Yeah. Well, number one, anything you delegate that you don't define first, uh, it it develops a weird spirit, and it gets weird. And a lot of times we do it ourselves because it takes time to define.
Mm.
And many times we've already hadn't spent the time to duplicate. I used to think you delegate and then duplicate, but you duplicate all the time so you can delegate.
Mm.
And, it's one of those things that, Ed Young Jr., my favorite and only Ed Young Jr. quote,
Yep.
is the bigger your ministry, the more time you spend in leadership development,
That's right.
you spend with other people. And so it's one of those things that I know for me, because I have duplicated, I can delegate. But I go back to that simple thing that I've talked about, learned from Maxwell.
Yeah.
What are you doing that someone else can do?
Yeah.
And take them with you. Let y'all do it together.
Yeah.
Then let them do it under supervision.
Yeah.
And then let them do it. And you say, well, Jim, they can't do it as well as me. Well, there was a time you couldn't do it as well as you.
That's
Somebody
exactly.
let you sorry all over a group of folks
Yeah.
and get better. And you have to return the favor. And so I ask myself, what am I doing that someone else can do? What are the things that only I can do?
Yeah.
And that really helped me with, I'm one of the things I'm going to be teaching on at Kids Matter Conference, and that I'm so passionate about is ministry and home balance.
Yeah.
And I'm the only one that can be Yancey and Whitney's dad, and Sparrow and Rhythm and Royals G. And
Yeah.
nobody else is going to have that job. And I can only be the one to be Julie's husband. And
Yep.
so
Yep.
there's other things, changing the battery on the wireless mic, doing slides for songs on Sunday. There's other people that can do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I just have to delegate uh, to those that I've duplicated and that I've also defined. Everybody that serves in your ministry needs to know just two things. What do you want me to do? How do you want me to do it?
Yeah.
And it takes time to answer that question in writing. But if you do it different, if every time you need to answer that question, you stop and have to tell somebody rather than put it in writing.
Yeah.
And so it's, and then because we're working with younger leaders now, it needs to just be bullet points. the younger the leader, the less the details.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's not a slam on the younger generation. That's just understanding how they operate.
Yeah. Yeah. Jim, somebody told me once, and maybe I read it in a Maxwell book or something, or it may come from you. I don't know that, but 70% of what you do, anybody can do. 20% of what you do, somebody else can do with training.
With training.
With training, and 10% of what you do, only you can do. So, boy, if you can learn to delegate that 70%, you don't have to be the one that goes to Costco and buys the snacks every week and runs the copies on the copy machine. And that 20%, get some people, find some good quality people that you trust and train them. And boy, all of a sudden now you've got margin and capacity like you haven't had before to do that stuff that only you can do. But it requires a commitment to building a team and delegating.
Yeah, I like to say the general doesn't decide who drives the Jeep.
Mm-hmm.
There's other folks that decide that, and not that I'm beyond that.
Yeah,
because I did my Jeep list for years and all those kind of things. But I'm going to spend time with other generals, and other colonels and the folks. Jesus had a 12, but can you imagine when he went on with the big three, Peter, James, and John? The other ones probably said, beep, 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 Peter, James, John.
Right.
And out of the three, there was one. Peter might got the church, but John got mama.
Yeah.
And to a Southerner, that lets you know John had a special relationship. He got mama, probably got the hunting dog too. So, it's there. Even Jesus had tears. I mean, I know Judas was a real jerk at the end, but I think he was able to look at Peter and say, "You've overspent your budget, bud."
Yeah.
Or Jesus wouldn't have given him the purse. And so, there even Jesus had tears of leadership.
Yeah, he did, didn't he? That's a good point. Jim, you're the executive pastor now at this growing church. Most of the people that are watching or listening to this podcast, you're a leader. You get it. You've got distractions. They're with our phones and our devices pinging us, pinging and dinging, and people knocking on the door and emails chirping at us and reminders popping up. It's difficult to stay focused. Have you learned any secrets? Because we both agree that if you're going to be productive, you have to have some times where you can focus. How do you stay focused with 100 people wanting your attention and your phone going off and all of these distractions that we live in these days?
Yeah. First of all, you said it, pings going off. My pings don't go off. All notifications have been cut off. They pop up and I can read it if I'm looking at it. Some show up on my watch till I turn it off. But I don't have any dings. I also, second thing, it's so funny. Every time I'm on your podcast, I think about this because you always use my bro Jim, Jim Wideman Ministry, probably my oldest email because you're one of my oldest friends. And it's not on my work computer. So I have to set my iPad next to my work computer and copy and paste and bring it over because I don't have any personal or Jim Wideman Ministry stuff on my church computer. When I'm at work, I'm at work. I do Jim Wideman Ministries on Fridays and at night, and I don't mix the machines. And those things that helps me. The other thing that helped me, anything that goes off is on my second page. So my messages, uh, any kind of social media, email. Like when I look at my phone on my
Yeah.
home screen, there is nothing that can get my attention.
Hmm.
And so I learned that from Kerry Newhoff.
Uh-huh.
He just put his phone and stuff on the second page, and immediately I didn't see that I had messages. I didn't see I had missed
That's
calls.
interesting. Yeah.
And I still, to this day, schedule, uh, uh, I don't really take a morning break and an afternoon break,
Uh-huh.
you know, anymore. But I schedule those two times to check my messages and my emails.
Okay.
Um, uh, and I use multiple emails uh,
Mhm.
for different things. I know my senior pastor has a burner phone, which I think that's funny.
Yeah.
That
Does it really? Yeah.
me and the other executive pastor and his children and wife are the only ones that have that burner phone.
Okay.
Uh, but it's funny that he uses a burner, but at least it's just another number he don't give out. That
Right.
we
Exactly.
we like to call it the burner.
Yep.
We
Yep.
watch a lot of spy TV,
Yep.
and so that's just something he does. But I found it really makes a difference what page all that stuff is on uh,
That's
in
interesting.
your phone and all. And I use
Yeah.
multiple devices. I think we've talked about this before.
Hmm.
I have a laptop that I never move off my desk,
Okay.
except I need to move it somewhere here in the church. It never goes home.
Okay.
Um, I have uh, I switched to a desktop. I was on so many podcasts and coaching people. I just went to a big desktop
At
Mac
home.
that I've got a huge screen there and then another
Nice.
huge screen next to it, and
Yeah.
use that. I have another one in my shipping department where my books are at my home office, and then I use an iPad Pro. I use an iPad Mini
Okay.
as a notebook, and I quit finally using paper altogether. And
Hmm.
I'm so cheap, I use the same Apple Pencil on both my uh, iBooks
Yep.
are frugal,
Yeah.
and uh, and then I have a cloud that knows when I used which device,
Yeah.
and then I have an iPhone 14,
Yeah.
and those are the devices that I use, and my calendar is on all of them, and again, my calendar is my batarang. Um,
Yeah.
Batman is a personal hero of mine and Corey Jones. And
Yeah. Both of you. Yep.
one of the things we have in common is our love for each other and our love for Batman.
Yep. Yep.
But, although Batman grabbed that shark spray in the 60s, he hadn't used it much since
Yeah.
uh, on that utility belt. But that batarang he grabs on every episode. And that's the way my calendar is. And that's why I wrote the book, Beat the Clock.
Yeah.
It was in my very first book that's out of print now, Children's Ministry Leadership. You can do it, guide. Wrote a chapter on time management, and everybody said, "Well, that's good, but I need a book
Mm.
on that chapter," and that's what Beat the Clock
Okay.
came from. And now, in the new book, which is the after 22 years of having children's ministry leadership, the You Can Do It guide, I read it one day and realized I didn't do half that stuff anymore. And I I never want to tell people what I used to do, right?
Yeah.
I want to tell them what I'm doing right now.
Yeah.
And so the new book, Authentic Leadership That Lasts, I updated the time management chapter there.
Okay.
That's
Yep.
really, it's more up to date than Beat the Clock is still more detail,
Yeah.
but some of the apps and tricks and things that I didn't
Yes.
have when I wrote that other book are in the new book. And
Gotcha.
so
Gotcha. Jim, before we move to the last two questions, I'd love to hear from you on this topic. And that is, how do you know what to say yes to and what to say no to? Because so much, of life and productivity, and I guess really even just your destiny is based upon what I say yes to and no to. And for a leader, leaders love to say yes. Leaders are often opportunistic. They love to try new things. They love to go to a new level. But yes isn't always the right thing to say. What are your thoughts on how to know when to say yes and when to say no?
It's just real simple. I ask myself, am I the only one that can do
Uh-huh.
that? And I ask, is that something only I can do? Those two questions I ask. But I also ask, is this something good or is this something God? Before I say yes to anything, I still pray about it. I know that, that's not the answer most people give, but I still ask the Lord. I turn down speaking at, I go to D6 every year and have for a long time and love those guys, love them with all my heart.
They're good people.
They are good people.
Yeah.
They love Jesus.
They do.
But their conference is right after Easter. And I'm on a new team. I'm a year in. This will be my second Easter. And I need to celebrate. I brought on new staff this year and all that. And I asked, is this really best for my church?
Yeah.
And celebrating with my team the week after Easter and going out to eat and bringing donuts at staff after Easter it's a bigger deal than I'm here.
Yeah.
Than I'm making a little extra money.
Yeah.
And so I ask myself, does this meet God's plan? And I ask that as well, Lord, because there's times, last year, I really believe the Lord told me I need to go and be there. This year, I had to turn them down. And, I really believe I was supposed to be at Kids Matter, and I had to contact y'all and say, I think I'm supposed to be here, and I still pray about stuff. I also that's the main thing. The other thing, it's funny physically and just those things. Unless I have unless I get a thus saith the Lord, I don't say yes. I used to, my default was yes.
Yeah.
And I prayed, Lord, stop
me.
And now I've changed my default to maybe. I don't ever want my default to be no. People that lead with no are a little closed-minded.
Yeah.
But it's maybe, and then I ask the Lord, and that's the thing. I'm learning. Is there somebody on my team that needs that experience so they can handle even bigger situations? And so now I'm doing a lot of legacy type stuff where I'm teaching through my nose that I do, and I involve someone else, or I'll say yes if I can take somebody with me to teach them and make that experience theirs.
Yeah. Boy, that's good, Jim. Friends, it's Jim Wideman. Jim has so many great books and resources over at jimwideman.com. Go check it out. You need to get every one of his books if you don't have them and read them. You'll never regret it. If you buy his books and you say, Ryan, you told me to buy his books, they weren't any good, I'll buy those books from you. But that's not going to happen. I promise you that. Go check out jimwideman.com. Jim, I always like to end the podcast with two questions. First, I'd love to hear from
And
you.
you already know the answer. You already know the answer to the first question.
Moses and Jethro, what's your favorite Bible story?
Right. It's found in Exodus. It's about Moses and Jethro.
Yeah.
Ryan said, I can't teach a workshop without talking about Moses and Jethro.
Jim cannot teach a workshop or write a magazine article without talking about Moses and Jethro.
No,
Talk to us about it.
When we started K, it was really all my articles was the next adventure of Moses.
Of Moses and Jethro. Yeah.
My favorite thing is when we first meet him, he's not in Jethro. And he goes from friend of God to excellence. And I always say, even a man named Excellence doesn't start out excellent.
Yeah.
And but there's so much in there. And I do one of my favorite teachings to teach is how to raise the leadership of those you lead. And I get what Jethro said to Moses. And it's by far. If I was going to get a tattoo, it would probably be of Moses and Jethro and get a full back piece.
Jim, final question. What's something big that Jim Wideman's working on right now?
Well, I'm really excited. I'm on board the new kids pastor. I'm starting my last coaching group for 2023.
Love it.
Filled up another one, and that's kind of fun. But the thing I'm working on that's really the big, in 2024, I'm going to teach coaches how to coach. And I'm giving away every secret, everything I've learned about coaching, all the things that have worked. I'm giving away the 16 herbs and spices of why people have me coach them so that others can coach. And I'm starting to release, certify, and teach, give people authorization to coach with my books, and just having fun. So that's going to be in January 2024. I'd love to work with any folks with the Coach to Coach program, and that's going to be part of the finale, getting me ready to go home to see Jesus.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's Jim Wideman. Go check out all of Jim's resources, including what he just talked about, at jimwideman.com. Jim, it's always a blessing. Thank you so much for your time.
Thanks, Ryan. Love you, buddy.
Love you.
This episode of the Ryan Frank Podcast has ended, but be sure to subscribe for more conversations to help you stay on the leading edge. And if you like what you've heard, please rate this podcast with 5 stars. Thanks so much, and we will talk to you next time.